In this BocaPhysics video, you'll see a set of simulations of magnetic field lines due to systems comprised of current-carrying wires. In the first simulation, you see a magnetic field line due to a very long straight current-carrying wire. The direction of the magnetic field can be determined using the right-hand rule. If your thumb is in the direction of the current, then your fingers will wrap around the wire in the direction of the magnetic field. If we assume that the current is flowing in an upwards direction, then the magnetic field will be in a counterclockwise direction. Similarly, if we assume that the current is flowing in a downwards direction, then the magnetic field will be in a clockwise direction. By symmetry, the magnetic field has the same magnitude at all points equidistant from the wire, and the magnetic field line forms a circle. In the second simulation, you see the magnetic field lines due to two very long straight wires that carry current that flows in the same direction. Let's assume that the current flows in an upwards direction. By the right-hand rule, this means that the magnetic field due to each wire will be in a counterclockwise direction. Consider the region of space close to the wire on the left. The two innermost magnetic field lines depicted encircle only the wire on the left and are slightly deformed circles. The next innermost magnetic field line depicted also encircles only the wire on the left, but is pronouncedly egg-shaped. Let's examine a magnetic field line that encloses both wires. In the region of space between the wires and behind them, we see that the left-hand wire contributes to the magnetic field a component pointing to the left, as well as the component that points into the screen. And the right-hand wire contributes magnetic field components that point to the left, as well as out of the screen. Directly between both wires, the magnetic field vanishes. In this region, the components that point into and out of the screen tend to cancel out, but the components that point to the left add up, leading to the behavior we see simulated here. In the third simulation, you see that the magnetic field lines due to two very long straight wires that carry current, which flows in opposite directions. The field lines will all be distorted circles with larger and larger perimeters the further away you get from each wire. In contrast to the previous simulation, every magnetic field line encloses only one wire. Let's assume that the current in the left-hand wire flows up and the current in the right-hand wire flows down. On the midplane, the magnetic field has only one component, and that component points into the screen. In the fourth simulation, you see the magnetic field lines due to a row of very long wires which carry current that flows in the same direction. We recognize the same kind of behavior exhibited in the simulation of two parallel wires. The magnetic field lines that lie closest to a wire enclose only that wire. As we move further away, the magnetic field lines enclose more than one wire. If we assume that current flows in an upward direction, then all the magnetic field lines will be in a counterclockwise direction about the wires. From this simulation, we can begin to understand the behavior of the magnetic field due to an infinite current sheet. In that case, the magnetic field would be directed to the left above the current sheet and to the right below it. In the fifth simulation, we see the magnetic field lines due to a current-carrying ring. Each of the magnetic field lines forms a closed loop and lies in one plane, except for the center magnetic field line, which is straight and extends to infinity. In the sixth simulation, we see the magnetic field lines due to a Helmholtz coil. These coils are used to generate fairly uniform magnetic fields. As before, the magnetic field lines form closed loops about the wires, and every magnetic field line lies in one plane with the exception of the field line that lies on the axis of the coils. That the magnetic field is fairly uniform can be seen in the next simulation. For clarity, only the field lines that lie in one plane are plotted. The magnitude of the field is indicated by colors, with green corresponding to the magnetic field magnitude in the middle between the coils, and pink corresponding to magnetic field, a smaller magnitude. Notice that there are some regions where the magnetic field has a little bit greater magnitude, up here, 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 and here. However, in the region between the coils, the color is fairly uniform and the lines are fairly straight, indicating a fairly uniform magnetic field. In the seventh simulation, we see the magnetic field lines due to a toroid. Notice that they are circles coaxial with the center of the toroid. The magnetic field depends inversely on the distance from the center of the toroid, and this is indicated by colors, with green representing the maximum magnetic field and pink representing the minimum magnetic field. All the simulations you've seen so far display the classic textbook behavior of closed loops lying in a single plane or magnetic field lines that extend to infinity. Students are often led to believe that all magnetic fields exhibit only this kind of behavior and that this is a direct consequence of the divergence-free nature of the magnetic field. However, magnetic fields exhibit far more complicated and interesting behavior. For example, magnetic field lines can wrap around wires numerous times and not close. In the study of plasma physics, magnetic field lines that do not exhibit the classic behavior discussed in textbooks are ubiquitous. In particular, one of the main focuses of fusion research has been the study of containment of hot plasmas by magnetic fields. To the fusion researcher, there are three important types of magnetic field lines. The first is rational, meaning that the field line closes after a finite number of transits. With the exception of the lines that are straight and go off to infinity, all the magnetic field lines up to and before the simulation have been rational. They close after one transit. Second is ergodic, meaning that the field line covers the surface. Another way of stating this is that the field line closes only after an infinite number of transits. And the third is stochastic, meaning that the field line fills the volume of space. Of these three types, ergodic surfaces are the ones that exhibit favorable magnetic confinement properties. Magnetic field lines can also be chaotic, meaning that a very different trajectory obtains if the initial coordinates are slightly different. We'll consider three simple systems that lead to complicated behavior. In this simulation, there are two very long wires oriented perpendicularly to each other with a uniform magnetic field superimposed on the system. This is a single magnetic field line which clearly does not close after one transit. Note that the field line wraps around both wires and remains in the region of space where the two wires are closest. In the next simulation, the system is identical to the one just seen. The wires are oriented the same way and carry the same current, and the same uniform magnetic field is superimposed on the system. In this case, we investigate a different magnetic field line by starting at a different point in space. Notice that this field line wraps around only one wire, and the line lies on a bulb-shaped surface. In the final simulation, we see a magnetic field line due to a long straight wire that lies along the axis of a current-carrying ring wire. Notice that the field line lies on the surface of the toroid. Essentially, it's a donut. You may be familiar with the tokamak, which has been investigated more than any of the other candidates for fusion reactors. The magnetic surfaces generated by tokamaks are toroids, and you may have wondered why. The answer to that question lies in topology. In topology, there are four basic surfaces: the sphere, the toroid, the Klein bottle, and the projection plane. Now, Klein bottles and projection planes sit naturally only in higher dimension space, so that leaves the sphere and the toroid. The fusion researcher is interested in magnetic fields that exhibit a combination of ergodicity and rationality. That is to say, magnetic field lines that lie on a surface. You have seen that magnetic field lines can lie on the surface of a toroid, but there is no way for magnetic field lines to cover the surface of a sphere. You can think of magnetic field lines as being the strands of a hair. There is no way to brush the strands of the hair on a sphere without a sudden reversal in the direction of the hairs. This is why plasma containment devices generate toroidal-shaped magnetic surfaces.